Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to the April meeting of the MAG Standard Details and Specifications Committee. And we'll go ahead and get started for today. If we want to, do we need to do any introductions, Gordon, or do we have anyone new online?
I see a Rachel Marks, who I'm not familiar with.
Hi there. I'm just sitting in for Warren White, who normally attends from the city of Chandler. He's on vacation this week, so he sent me in his place.
All right, Rachel, you've got a lot to live up to. We're going to expect a lot of comments and feedback today.
Warren just said to vote yes on the minutes, so.
All right, very good. Well, welcome. We're glad that you're able to fill in today. Thank you for your time today. Okay, we'll go on to the call to the audience. This is an opportunity that will be provided to members of the public to provide input through written comment to the Standard Specifications and Details Committee on items that are not on the agenda that are within the jurisdiction of MAG, or on items on the agenda for discussion but not for action. Members of the public are asked to submit written comments related to this meeting through the MAG website at www.azmag.gov/comment and indicate for which meeting the comment is intended. Comments may be sent at any time leading up to the meeting, but must be received at least 1 hour prior to the posted start time for the meeting. Comments received prior to the deadline will be read aloud during the meeting. Comments may also be provided in person. Comments must not exceed 3 minutes in length. A total of 15 minutes will be provided for the call to the audience agenda item, unless the chair of the Standard Specifications and Details Committee requests an exception to this limit. Please note that comments received for agenda items posted for action will be read at the time the item is heard. To attend the meeting by technological means, members of the public may access the link to watch a video stream on the MAG website by clicking on the "This meeting is available to watch online" link provided at the azmag.gov website. Okay, Gordon, did we receive any comments prior to the meeting to be read aloud?
No, we didn't.
Okay, very good. And we don't have anyone here in person for the meeting today that are visitors. Well, I guess Alex is visiting, but did you have anything that you wanted to comment on that wasn't one of the cases? Okay, very good. We'll move on to agenda item number 3, the approval of the March 1st, 2023 meeting minutes. We can go ahead and scroll through those. And if anyone has any comments or modifications, after we get through those, we'll go ahead and discuss those. Otherwise, we'll entertain a motion on those minutes.
We're very long this month, so it's going to be a long time scrolling.
Okay, and of course, we didn't expect everyone to read those as we scrolled through them. Hopefully everyone had a chance to review those previously. Is there anyone with any questions or comments on the meeting minutes, or otherwise we'll have a motion for the minutes? Okay, hearing no comments, is there anyone that would like to make a motion?
Ryan, I'll motion for approval.
Okay, thank you, Craig. Is there a second?
Second.
This is Roy. I'll second.
Thank you. We'll go ahead and do a roll call vote on the minutes now.
This is the minutes for March 1st, 2023. Avondale. Is Avondale on yet? Buckeye,
Buckeyes a yes.
Chandler,
Yes.
El Mirage,
Yes.
Gilbert,
That one is gone. That was canceled. Yeah, that's canceled.
Gilbert,
Yes.
Glendale,
Yes.
Goodyear. It's good you're on. Maricopa County,
Yes.
Mesa,
Yes.
Peoria, Phoenix,
Yes.
Yes.
Scottsdale,
Yes.
Surprise,
Yes.
Tempe, is Tempe on? For sure. Is there anyone who I didn't call? Youngtown, I have 10 yes and 6 not present. 5 not present. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. We'll go ahead and move on to the next agenda item number 4, which is our staff report. And this is regarding vice chair nominations. Gordon, do you want to take us through that?
I don't have a whole lot to report. I have talked to a couple people who are unable to do it due to promotions and other duties. So we're still looking and hoping that someone will step forward. And we're going to expand our search to people on the east side of the valley as well. So if anyone is interested, please give us a call.
I went ahead and canceled my vacation for May, just so you guys know. No, we appreciate everyone and their willingness to participate on the committee. And as mentioned, we'll be reaching out to some additional people for filling the vice chair role, hoping that we can bring that on in the next meeting if possible. Okay, thank you very much. Any other items under staff report?
I just also wanted to mention that in lieu of not having a vice chair, if for some reason Ryan would be unable to attend, the past chair, I'm looking at you, Craig, can fill in that in his absence.
Very good. Okay, thank you very much. Let's go ahead and move on to our cases under consideration. So we are looking at agenda item number 5, case 22-15, add a new subsection 718.4 for solar reflective coatings and add reference to that in section 334. This is a carry forward case from our previous year. We've had a little bit of discussion on that this year, but haven't had too many additional comments or updates. But we'll go ahead and open that up. It looks like, I don't know if Kelly's online, if you have any updates for us or if anyone has any questions also.
Yeah, I don't have any updates this time.
Okay, thank you. Are there any questions, comments, feedback on this case? I know last year there was, towards the end of the year, we had talked about working on getting this into MAG and taking a vote on it. There was some concern expressed by different municipalities on not having had sufficient time to review it. And again, we're now in April of this year, so I'm certain that the request will be to bring this to a vote. So far, we haven't really had any additional comments or feedback or changes requested on this case. So I would respectfully request that if there's municipalities that would like to continue their review of this, let's try to come back for May with any feedback or questions so that we have, the next couple months to address any questions or comments on this particular case. Before the end of the year. Since we are in the second year, this is not a great candidate to continue pushing out into the future. So far, the feedback's been pretty limited, which is fine if there's no questions or comments. But if we do have some, let's try to bring that forward in the next month so that we have time to address any of those items. Thank you. Moving on to item number 6, case 23-01, miscellaneous corrections. And we have just these 3 items here listed on the agenda. Section 401.5, change Arizona Highway Department to Arizona Department of Transportation, which is pretty straightforward. Section 102.10, delete or by telegram from this section. And then item C, remove reference to manhole steps in section 605.4, 610.8, and table 771-1. Are there any questions or comments on these items, or does anyone have any other miscellaneous corrections to add to the case? Okay, hearing none, we'll move on to the next agenda item, number 7. Case 23-02, revised section 725, Portland Cement Concrete. This is to update subsection 725.2 cementitious materials to allow the options of Portland limestone and ternary blended cements. This case is sponsored by Jeff, and Jeff, I think between you and Alex, I think if you have any updates for us or any discussion on this, we'll start with that.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. We did have some discussion at the working group meeting on March 16th on this case. We went over, that was the first time that the working group had seen this revision, even though this revision was in the packet for, and we discussed it at the last committee meeting. The revisions were made before, in between the 2 working groups. So we did have some discussion on it. There was, if you remember, we have added information or added some revisions to section 725.1.1, which was not initially included, basically talking about the percentage of fly ash or natural pozzolan that could be incorporated into the minimum cementitious materials contents that are listed in table 725-1. There was some comments over the wording of the way that the proposed revision has been worded. If you guys want to take a look at that second page of the standard. Yes. Basically, here's what my intent is here. In the past, ASTM C150 Portland cements, we could add up to 25% by weight of fly ash or natural pozzolan into any of those table requirements when we're using any of the C150 Portland cements. However, when we start talking about blended cements, as you will recognize, the 1P cement that has been in the standard for many, many years already incorporates fly ash or natural pozzolan in it. So we want to be careful. We don't want people to add additional materials on top of something that would already incorporate it. So when we talk about adding 1L and we talk about the ternary blended materials, 1L would have a limestone in it, but would not have an SEM. So it certainly would fall under the same category as C150 cements in being allowed to incorporate fly ash or natural pozzolan into that product. Ternary blend could potentially have one of those products already as part of the 3 items that would be in it, one of the ternary items that would be in it. So we want to be careful on allowing people to add those materials. So here's where it gets a little sticky and where the conversation was with the working group. We're allowing up to 25%, and I don't think any of the agencies have had any problems with that. That's something we've been doing for quite a while. But if I'm incorporating, I'm going to give you an example. If I have a ternary blend that has 15% fly ash in it, or I have a 1P blend that only has 15% fly ash in it, we've been allowing in MAG to up to 25%. So we're kind of in that realm of, okay, rather than just say, no, you can't add that material to either one of these products, we get back to trying to figure out how we stay under that 25% maximum amount that's been currently in the standard without changing that, without going over that or around that or through that. Now, you also see that we have had an additional sentence in this, though, for reasons that we've had discussed in the past. You may want to exceed that 25% requirement. It may be for ASR reasons. It might be for high performance, high strength reasons. There could be reasons why you would want to do that. And upon the approval of the engineer, we've allowed that to happen. Again, not as a matter of fact, but something that would be submitted to the engineer for approval and obtain that approval prior to use of that material. So you can see now we're kind of, I'm trying to get that language in there that incorporates all these little things that I just talked about. I believe that the language I'm proposing here would handle that. And basically I'm proposing saying up to 25% by weight of table 725-1 minimum cementitious materials requirements may be an approved fly ash or natural pozzolan when the mixed design incorporates C150 Portland cement. That's where we have been in the past. Of any type, 1, 2, 3, 5, whatever it happened to be, or C595 1L blended cement, limestone cement. Again, that's a product that does not have SCMs already in it. And then the additional sentence would say additional pozzolanic materials in excess of the minimum table 725-1 requirement may be incorporated into any concrete mix design to achieve enhanced performance upon approval of the engineer. So if I go back to my discussion, if I had a 1P material that had only 15% fly ash, upon approval of the engineer, the ready mix producer could add another 10% or more if it was needed for a particular application. But again, you'd have to get approval of the engineer. So I don't think I'm changing anything. Otherwise, I think the language is going to get pretty complex if I start trying to put other examples and things in there. So I know that various of the committee members are very good at getting language appropriate. So I'm kind of asking for some help from some of the other committee members to see, number one, does my language that I'm proposing here incorporate the scenarios that I just went through? Or do I need to say something more? Do I need to be more specific in this language? Again, I'm trying to put the norm would be up to 25%, but certainly upon approval of the engineer, a ready mix producer could propose different combinations of materials. Does any of that make sense?
Yeah, it makes perfect sense to me.
I don't want to be too restrictive in the language. I want to allow ready mix producers, contractors to have the flexibility to propose mixed designs for particular applications that they would like to use with appropriate backup to show what that performance would be. But I still want to leave that engineering approval in there prior to use of that, so that we're crossing all the T's, dotting all the I's, doing everything right. So we're making sure that we're not utilizing materials incorrectly, I guess I should say.
So read something similar to, well, the last sentence in particular, SCM shall not exceed the table, 725 without prior approval of the engineer, something similar to that. Is that kind of what you're looking for?
Yeah, and I think that's but basically that's the language that's pretty much been in there in the past, saying additional pozzolanic materials in excess of the minimum requirements may be incorporated. Part of that minimum requirement would be that 25% by way of the table that's in the previous sentence.
Yeah, it's pretty clear in that last sentence. To me, it is anyway.
And again, I would envision, we're seeing, just my personal opinion, we're seeing aggregates in the Phoenix area, the Metro Phoenix area in particular, the ASR potentials on some of our aggregate sources have increased in the last 5, 6, 7 years as we go deeper in pit areas, as some of these pits that we've used for decades continue to age. And at times we need to use something else to mitigate that ASR potential, a higher percentage of materials at times. So that the 25% may not be a good number in specific instances. We also see on occasion, if we're talking high strength concrete, that's the other particular application where using a higher amount of an SCM pozzolanic material in the concrete mix design can give us better strengths ultimately down the road. The other thing we're seeing, obviously, and everyone's very aware of it, and that's the whole purpose behind adding these materials in, is, you know, global warming and reducing our greenhouse gas emissions, and, you know, bringing the carbon CO2 requirements down and so on. By incorporating some of these SCM materials, ground limestone and so on, we can help that carbon footprint quite a bit. And with the proper engineering approval, the proper mix designs, some of these things can be very beneficial. But I think in general, we're still trying to say the default is the table requirements like they have been in the past. I don't want to change the default in general what those, but I just want to have that option of allowing contractors and ready mix producers to submit specific mixes at times that might meet a certain requirement that could get engineering approval to be used.
Jeff, I've got a clarifying question for you here. On this last paragraph, it references the first two types of cement, and maybe it's not the first two, but it references C150 Portland cement of any type, or C595 type IL blended limestone cement. When those two types of cement are used, then we're saying that up to 25% by weight of the amount of cementitious material in the table, which is specifying a minimum amount, may be the fly ash, right? Up to 25%. So in a sense, we're saying 25% of that minimum cement material is allowed to be fly ash. That's correct so far, right?
Yes, and Ryan, that's all that really is adding in. That's the way that it's been in the in 725 for a long time.
Right. Now
we're just adding in the 1L. It's always been that way using C150 cements. We're just adding the 1L.
We didn't add in the 1P, right? Because
Correct.
that was the flash. So the way I read the second sentence, additional pozzolanic material, supplemental cementitious material in excess of the minimum table 725-1 requirements may be incorporated into any concrete. So is there a restriction then on the amount of fly ash that should be in the type 1P cement? Understanding that that's got potentially some built into it already, but are we trying to say that also should not exceed 25% by weight, or it doesn't matter for that type of cement, how much fly ash? Because right now, the way it's written, it says if you're using this first type of cement or the second type of cement, you can only go up to 25% of the material being fly ash. If it's the third type, there's no restriction. That's the way it's written right now.
Yeah, Ryan, if I'll refer you back then on the previous page. If you want to go back to the previous page, Gordon, in the third sentence, third paragraph, where it says supplementary cementitious materials shall not be used as an additional cementitious materials replacement in concrete in combination with Portland pozzolan cement type 1P or ternary blended cements type 1T without prior approval by the engineer. The reason for that, Ryan, is because they do incorporate they will incorporate potentially one of those materials already as being part of the blend. So okay. We want to be careful. We want to be careful. And notice it says as an additional cementitious materials replacement. we don't want to exceed that 25% reduction in the minimum cement contents that's in the table. And again, that's pretty much the way the existing standard has been. Just again, making sure people understand that a 1P product of Portland pozzolan cement already has that in it. Don't go overboard and think you can put 25% fly ash in on top of that, right?
Right. So
we have that safeguard there already.
Okay, so that particular paragraph is where we read that if you have the type 1P or 1T cement, then that mix design is already set, and you may not. You're basically, your limit is 0% additional fly ash as a supplemental cementitious material. So that's already establishing that limit of 0%.
Again, without prior approval by the engineer. There still might be an instance, right? But
Sure.
we're saying the default is no, you can't do it.
Okay.
Correct.
And that's fine. That makes sense. I didn't see that written in the paragraph where we talk about the limit of 25% for the other two. It might be nice to have those limits all located in one paragraph or one spot, just so that it's not missed.
No, I understand, Ryan. That was going to be my second item. That was the second thing that people brought up was, well, maybe we should move that third paragraph talking about supplementary cementitious materials under section 725.1.1 on supplementary cementitious materials.
Yeah, that
not change the wording necessarily, but move that under 725.1.1 where we start talking about this other paragraph of 25%, what the maximum percentages are.
Sure. And I think that makes sense, because the wording, once you pointed out that other paragraph, I think that does clarify to me what I was asking about. And of course, we were focusing on this last paragraph, so I hadn't gone back and reread that.
No, that's part of the issue, though, isn't it? Right? They're in two different places. But let me say this: the reason that we put it there a long time ago, why it was in that section, was because this section 725.2 is cementitious materials, right? What happens is, or what we were concerned about is, someone's going to read that section about what the minimum cement contents are, what kind of, with the different types of cement you can use. The table is right there. They're not going to read any farther. You see what I'm saying? They're not going to go any farther to 1.1 and see what those additional restrictions are. That was one of the reasons that 10 years ago, we put that sentence or that paragraph right up in there in the middle of it, so that people would see that and be able to read that as they went and not miss it by not reading far enough in the specification to see those additional restrictions, if you see what I'm doing there. But I totally agree that probably now we should move that under 725.1.1.
Yeah, I think that would be my preference, but that was my only comment or question, and thank you for the clarification. Are there other comments or discussion on this?
No, I'd agree if lumping them together, right? That was one thing that I was kind of processing while Jeff was talking. You beat me to the punch, but I would agree 100%.
So this is Roy. I agree as well. The only comment I would have would just be regard to the numbering. We're off on our numbering. We're going from 725.1 to 725.2, then back to 725.1.1.
Oh.
We might want to look at the numbering on that.
Yeah, that's a good point. That's a good point, Roy. Let me take another. That's probably my error just in putting the wrong number there. I'm sure that in the standard, in the current standard, that numbering is correct. That should be 725.2.1. Supplementary cementitious material should be 725.2.1, still being under the heading of cementitious materials. I'm sure that's my error.
Hey, Jeff, it's Jim.
Yeah, Jim.
Any thoughts on presenting this in some kind of a table or a matrix format? I'm just trying to, as you've been going through this, I've been trying to just tie it together, and I don't know the table would help instead of just lumping it in a narrative in a paragraph. I don't know, I'm just thinking out loud here.
No, I absolutely appreciate that, Jim. That's the reason I'm bringing this to you guys in the committee, is because this group is so good at thinking about those kinds of things. How's the best way to make this presentation? And you're correct. Sometimes a verbal discussion is not nearly as clear as putting something, having some sort of tabular table kind of scenario. That's exactly what the kind of feedback I was looking at. Let me think about that. If there's I want this to be clear, but I also want people to know that there are options and what those options are, and to walk their way through making sure things don't go together properly.
I mean, I just think about that, like I visualize this like a recipe, you're
Yeah.
building a recipe. And so to me, some kind of tabular or table might be more easier to digest or to know what your options are.
No, that's a good point. Let me think about how I could do and try to build upon table 725.1. Or I should say supplement table 725.1 with another table on cement types and supplementary materials. Yeah, I'll take a shot at that. That's not a bad idea. That's a great idea, actually.
Keeps getting better. Who's got the next best comment?
So I'll take my shot at it. I got a question for you, Jeff. So if we're talking a 1P or a 1T material, you're saying that from either one of those cements, we don't want to add any SCMs to it. Is that correct?
Well, in the past, the standard had said no, without, again, keep in mind, without prior approval by the engineer. So we're back to that scenario. I could have a 1P that only had 15% fly ash in it, right? I don't want someone to throw 25% on top of that is allowable in the standard, but they certainly could add another 10% to make a total of 25%, as long as they got the engineer's approval.
So I guess that's kind of where the second part of this question was going. So if we're gonna specify a 1P or a 1T cement in this, and we do add, let's say 15% in the original design or 15% in the 1P, and we're gonna add 10% of an SCM in there to equate the 25%. Does that diminish any of the strength? Is that got any derogatory, any downsides to it?
No, it's not any different than the ready mix producer buying the two products separately and in his mix design, putting in 25% at the batch plant versus 15% already in the blended cement and 10% fly ash added at the batch plant. It's all the same.
Okay, and to roll back into one additional follow-up on that. So if we're gonna have a 1P or a 1T cement in this, how are we gonna know what percentage is already in the 1 or 1T, so we know what our limit of additional SCMs can go in to equate to that 25%?
That is a very good question. And in C595, the naming of the materials, I'll give you an example. I'm the only producer who makes a 1P at this moment in time, and that's been approved for use by agencies and for ADA. My 1P does have 25% fly ash in it, and I chose that particularly because those are the requirements that MAG and or ADOT specifications require. It just made it easy, right? The naming nomenclature that's used in C595, my product is actually called a 1P parentheses 25. That 25 in the parentheses tells you it's got 25% of a pozzolanic material in it. If I was doing a 15%, it would be called 1P15. That's required in C595 as a naming. Now on a 1T, let's just take the same example. If 1T had 10% limestone and 15% of a pozzolan, it would be 1T P, let's see, L10 P15. Now, does that get complicated? Yes, but it's part of the naming. But it's like me calling it either a type 2 or a type 5 or a type 3 or anything else. That's the way the naming nomenclature is. So you would know on them, if anyone looking at the mix design would look at it and say, just as you would see today, that you're using ASTM C150 type 2.5 cement, it would say ASTM C595 1P parentheses 25, and you'd know that it had 25% pozzolan in it.
Okay, so I guess the question, sorry, one more follow-up on that. So
It gets more complicated.
it does. I'm digging a hole here. So at the Jeff Hearn Cement Factory, we're gonna create this 1P25. But if we get a mixed design from the Acme Cement Company, we're gonna get a 1P. How can we tell the difference?
Again, it should be on the mix design, the naming nomenclature that should be on that product. Just like you would see C150 type 2.5, it should say C595 1P parentheses 15.
So is that the standard nomenclature for any mixed design that comes across somebody's desk?
That is the requirements in C595 of how you let the end user know what the product is.
Okay, yeah, that was the ultimate question, because if I'm looking at a design, I'm not gonna know what's in there unless it tells me. But so if it tells me it's a 595 1P, and I'm losing track of all the numbers and the letters.
Well, it's just like if you saw a moderate sulfate, like we have required in the past for C150 cements to be moderate sulfate, and you would have in parentheses C150 type 2 parentheses MS for moderate sulfate, right? That would tell the end user, anyone else looking at the mix design, what that product was, that there was an additional requirement that it met. In 595, that nomenclature is the same. You have to tell it when you use it in a concrete mix design, you provide that documentation to somebody, you have to designate how much material is in there, right? How much of the pozzolanic material in there, and you put that in parentheses. So it could be 1P10, it could be 1P15, it could be 1P, my product is 1P25. So very clearly, anyone looking at the mix design would know how much pozzolanic material is in that product.
And I agree with you now that I'm talking with you. However, somebody who's not in this meeting right now to understand what that parenthesis 25 or parenthesis 15 is that laid out somewhere in the C9595, or is
Absolutely.
It is, okay.
Just like if you read the first section on C150, gives you a list of the various cement products that are covered by the standard. C150 type 1, what it does, C150 type 2, what it does, C150 type 3, type 5, all those kinds of things. That's all laid out in C595. And we could try to put that in here, but I think that would just make things even more confusing, in all honesty, because it's in the standard, right? And you need to be cognizant, and any cement producer who's going to be selling that product to anyone in our marketplace, that would be the way they would have to name it. Now, we're only calling it 1P here because the requirement can be anywhere from 0 to 40% pozzolanic materials, and it could be called a 1P product.
Okay, and that's basically my ignorant brain was wanting to go down that path on adding something in here. If it's already in the ASTM standard, then there's no reason to put it someplace twice.
It is, and I will be happy to provide. Probably should have done that for you guys already. I'll be happy to provide you the couple of pages out of 595 that shows that naming nomenclature. It's very clearly spelled out exactly how you would know what the product is.
Okay. No, I think that answers all my questions. Thank you, Jeff.
And it has to be, if it has to be named that way. Otherwise, you wouldn't know what the material is. How could you possibly look at a mixed design and approve it?
My point, exactly. Yes, thank you.
This is Peter.
Turn your microphone on, Peter.
Okay. Oh, the green button works. Okay. So
So I knew you were talking. I just couldn't hear you.
it's normal with my home life too. So if I have a mixed design that's submitted and I've got an IP with a percentage of fly ash, could a vendor actually have a line for additional fly ash to meet under the 15%? It sounds like you're formulating this. So would we even want somebody, we'd want the vendor, it seems like, to formulate it, have it in the parentheses and not add more fly ash. Is that standard?
Well, here's the scenario though. Since I'm the only one, since Salt River Materials Group, Phoenix Cement Company is the only one who produces a 1P today, it's really easy for everybody to say, okay, I'm going to use 1P. Everybody knows it has 25%. It's all in my information, so on. But that's almost like proprietary. If we say you have to have 25% fly ash in it, that's almost like a proprietary product, right? You're not allowing people to make materials that might best be optimized or utilized in other applications and so on. So I don't think we want to do that. I don't want to think we want to mandate that they have 25% fly ash in it. I think we want to allow them to have other products in the marketplace, but we certainly still want to allow that to be used in the concrete mix design.
That's not where I'm going exactly. So I'm trying to come up with a scenario where you would have, say, somebody has an IP 15, would they then, could you then add another line that says fly ash on the mix design? I get my mix design, I've got my IP 15, and there would be a fly ash line below that, there would be another 10%, or would it just be whoever's formulating this would just have IP 25? And that's it, and there'd be no other fly.
You're correct. That's exactly what I'm trying to do. I'm trying to allow someone, if they had a 1P15 product and they wanted to use a maximum amount for whatever reason, for good reasons, we do that every day now in our concrete mix designs, right? Allow them to add an additional 10% fly ash to the mix design as a separate item.
But that falls into the last sentence where it says you can't do this under regular circumstances. If you choose to do this, you have to have the engineer approval to do that.
Yeah, and that's where I was trying to understand if it's formulated, where does my fly ash end up going to be in both spots, or is it always going to be just under one? It sounds like it could be in both locations then.
It would be part of the pre-blended product and then added as a separate item. But as Craig's question was, it doesn't really matter how you do it in the concrete mix design, or whether it's done like it is today. You have cement and you have fly ash separately. It's all the same. You know, the mix design performance should be the same.
Yeah, I was just trying to see if this was redundant. Do we need the last one? It sounds like, yes, we do need that last sentence in there.
Well, the thing we're trying to prevent is someone mistakenly having a 1P25 and adding 25% more fly ash in it as a run-of-the-mill thing without having a very good reason why you were doing that and getting engineering approval ahead of time.
Okay, now I think you answered that. That makes sense why we'd have to have that last sentence. Thank you.
But it isn't always very simple. That's why I'm trying to keep the language simple if we can, but still also trying to make sure it's going to be an educational process for individual agencies as they potentially look at these materials. And as these materials come into the marketplace, I can't tell you how they will or they won't, but we want to allow the use of these materials as they come in.
Well, Jeff, thank you. I always feel much smarter after listening to you talk until I go back to the office and someone asks me a question, and then all of a sudden I don't remember anything, and I'm like, I don't know. Let me look.
Now you know how I feel when Alex and you guys start talking about asphalt, and I go, yeah, that sounded right to me, and then I go, wait a minute. When I get back to my office, like, what was that? I don't get it. Wait a minute.
Are there any final questions or comments on this case?
I will take Jim's advice and see if I can't come up with maybe a tabular way to take a look at this instead of complete, verbiage, and see what I can do.
Great. Thank you, Jeff. Appreciate it. We'll go ahead and
appreciate everyone's comments. Thank you.
We'll go ahead and move on to agenda item 8, case 23-03, revise section 710 asphalt concrete. This is to update subsection 710.3 mixed design requirements to allow that under certain conditions, a volumetric checkpoint may be completed in lieu of a new mixed design. Again, sponsored by Jeff and Alex. Are you going to speak on this one, or is Jeff going to take
No,
this?
no. I'm turning it right to Alex. Alex, you're on, buddy.
Yeah, we presented this during the last working group for comment. It seemed well received. I have not received any comments or proposals for change in language. Jeff, have you received anything else by chance?
No, not at all. I would turn it right to you if I did, Alex.
Okay. So I mean, at this point, we're just seeking any comments or issues anybody sees with this challenge. We kind of talked about it during the last meeting in depth, so.
I'll just add my thought here. I did reach out to the City of Mesa Materials Lab on all of these materials cases, actually, and I received very positive feedback for each of these cases, and they had no comments or concerns with any of the cases, including this one. So I think it's a good move in the right direction.
Excellent. I appreciate that feedback. Thank you.
Any questions from the committee or comments? Looks like you got the easy one this time.
This time.
Okay, hearing no additional questions or comments, we can move on to the next agenda item, which is case 23-04, revised section 714, microsurfacing, and 715 slurry sill to remove the production tolerances column from table 714-1 and table 715-1 and update the note after each table. Again, sponsored by Jeff, and I get the feeling that Alex is the guy on this one also.
Oh,
Yep.
yeah.
And this is a lot the same. Again, we presented it. We had some discussion on kind of how it came to be, where it was pulled from, but that generally the consensus was it was felt not necessary. And we did not receive any other comment other than that.
Okay, open to the committee for any questions or comments. Okay, hearing none, we'll go ahead and move on to our next agenda item then, which is case 23-05, detail 212, utility pothole repair. Removing ABC as a final backfill option for potholes and strike note 2, native soil for temporary potholes. Arvid.
Thank you, sir. So you've got the language that we submitted last month. We got some feedback from Warren's group. We responded to them in kind to kind of reiterate what the purpose of this updating is for. Specifically has to do with the backfill of the pothole when the pothole needs to be finally backfilled permanently. We cannot get compaction testing on potholes because a typical pothole is 10 by 10 inches and there's no way to get down in there and compaction test ABC. So the working group decided it was best just to go with what the industry is typically doing right now, which is doing the HASAC CLSM for final backfill. The native or the temporary backfill is an agency by agency decision. Certain agencies are allowing us to backfill with native and cold patch, knowing that that pothole has to be reopened many times to verify existing clearances between a trenchless installation and the utility. And we don't want to be going through CLSM every time. So we're using native and cold patch. Other agencies are allowing that hole to be left in a 24-hour closure with a plate over the top of it. So that's really the two discussions here is changing the final backfill to CLSM only, HASAC CLSM, and then allowing for the agencies to make a decision. We have the verbiage on the detail, and Gordon, if you can jump to the detail, you'll see that it makes the final backfill the half sack, and then under the temporary pothole repairs, agency must approve a temporary, hold on a second, I gotta move my camera, a temporary pothole backfill. Depending on what the circumstance is for the agency to be issuing the permit for that pothole to begin with. And this is primarily targeted in towards the design potholing that takes place with all agencies in the preparation for a project eventually coming out to be built. Or for, we'll just use Southwest Gas as an example. Southwest Gas is going in and replacing a 4-mile gas system, and they need to find an alignment. And in doing so, they want to fill all those design potholes with CLSM because they don't know if they'll be using that alignment in 9 months or not. And we don't want to be leaving those design potholes temporary filled. We want them to be filled with CLSM, and then either have the coupon reinstated or do the hot patch pothole. So that's the overview.
And did I hear correctly? So you had these changes proposed at the last meeting. There haven't been any specific updates. You said there were some questions that you addressed, but that didn't result in any changes.
There was a couple questions from Warren's team. Again, I'll read it to you. It says, if we're removing the native option for temporary pothole backfill, is there an acceptable default material option to be used instead of possibly to be used instead, and possibly add note 1 unless otherwise specified by the agency? There was a concern with using ABC mix only with water. So one of the things that we do on a railroad right of way is they allow for flowable fill to be used as a temporary backfill material. And what that is ABC mixed with water, and a cement truck comes out to the job site and we shoot it into the potholes. And I mean, we're talking potholes that can be as much as 15 foot, 16 foot deep, and we'll shoot it into the pothole, and that ensures that that pothole is not going to settle. There was some concern about the using flowable fill because it doesn't have any binder like any cement in it. But again, it's not meant to be permanent. It's just a way of ensuring that a deep pothole, a shallow pothole is filled with an ABC type mix, and being that it's been mixed with water, yes, the fines get a little bit moved around, but it's a quick and easy way for us to fill the pothole and know that it's not going to settle. And so that was their other concern. And the response I just gave you is what I gave them. Ultimately, we're leaving the temporary pothole up to the agencies. We felt that was the best decision because every agency handles it a little bit differently. And then depending on the request for the pothole to begin with will drive what the temporary pothole will be filled with, if it can, or if it just has to automatically be filled with CLSM. It's going to be project by project because, again, if it's design, it's one path. If it's for construction, it's another path. If it's CMAR for design right into construction, that's another path. So there's just too many ways to look at all the options of what the best backfill option is, except for stating that the final backfill has to be CLSM.
Right. So as it stands now, the detail allows for temporary potholes, but only at agency approval.
Correct.
And including the backfill material. So it's the default is to be determined by the agency and either suggested by the contractor and approved by the agency or determined by the agency themselves.
Exactly.
Okay. Okay. Are there any?
I'm sorry. And just to reiterate, the only final backfill acceptable is half sack CLSM, because we know that pothole, once filled with half sack CLSM, will not settle once the hot patch or the coupon is reinstated.
Okay. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Any questions or comments? Okay, we'll move on. Thank you very much.
Thank you. I'm sorry, Mr. Chairman, if I'd like to, I don't know how much longer we want to let this roll out there, but I think typically we give it a couple of meetings before we ask for a vote. Is that correct?
We do. Yeah, I think it may be just a little bit premature. We try to get some voting done before we get to the last month when possible. So some of these cases that we haven't had comments on, I'd like to at least wait until next month and see if there's any final feedback. And if not, then maybe we start targeting a vote in June on some of these.
Thank you.
Okay, very good. We'll go ahead and move on to agenda item 11, case 23-06, vegetated or rock bioswales. Proposed new bioswale detail and related specifications. And I'll just cut it short with my explanation on that and turn the time over. Is Bashir on now? No? Okay. Peter, you're also involved on this case?
Yes, and I have to apologize. I got some comment. I did some revisions to be demonstrative on some of this stuff. Did you get those, Gordon? I emailed them a little while ago before I drove up here. Okay, so you don't have the email. So see if you can access that. That's my inability to get stuff done because what we wanted to do is just go through some of the items that were brought up last time in terms of concept. This is our trial run one that's really pretty much outside of the existing Blue Book. So within that, there should be 2 emails from me. Yeah, within that, yeah, there we go. So we can open that one up. And what I did was mark up one to try to, and again, this was also a request by Eric. He wanted to see kind of a red line of what was talked about last week. I wanted to show, at least conceptually, how we could make this look different. So you could differentiate between MAG specification versus the supplemental document that finally just calling MAG supplements. So at the very bottom, I started putting just initials. And we can talk about that in the update of the working group. But I started adding just letters MS right now in front, just to give some kind of differentiation. And then getting rid of the word standard because of the discussions last time and going to the word supplemental or supplemental specification or supplemental detail, as opposed to trying to identify this as the MAG standards. These are supplemental specifications and details. So within that, I started just marking this up to show how that could potentially look on this one as our example case. So you can see within there where it's referencing an existing MAG, for example, you would see, it would actually say MAG specification section blank. That would be the notes under general notes. You can see that. Maybe blow that up a little to the right side of the notes section, general notes section. Yeah, so this is one way I was thinking we could do that. So we've got seating per MAG specification section 430. That would be very clear mentioning that. If it's referencing a supplemental specification, it would say see supplemental specification section. And again, I'm using the letters MS because we haven't decided yet. MS 640 for vegetated bioswales. So starting to show that difference between those. And internally within this, I wanted to get that out to kind of see where those changes could be done, see if what kind of reaction, is that something that's more meeting what the committee would like to see as we bring these kinds of specifications forward. I started making some other changes based on the notes and Eric's going to deal with those, but that's the real thing I wanted to bring up now. And the same thing on the standards themselves, the details. So, we could bring up a Word document. One of the 2 Word documents will work. Yeah, it's as good as either of them. And the same approach was made. to try to look at it in a different, so you see at the top, it's got the reference MS-640. Again, we'll worry about the details, but we're getting rid of the words and adding the words, the supplemental section would be, and we're putting the word supplemental in there as we go through. As we go through the numbering, it's identifying with the supplemental numbering system at the top. Anytime we have a reference to MAG specification, you can see in the, third paragraph and fourth paragraph down, there you go. I would say MAG specification section. So the intent is to try to always show these as something different, or if it's referencing back to MAG, so we can have some ability to go back and forth a little bit more. At the bottom of the page, I even changed the heading a little, or the bottom saying supplemental specifications. And this is that idea of public works site, on-site construction, public works or on-site construction. Trying to come up with this language difference so we don't mix the two up. So you see one, it definitely looks different than a MAG specification. And again, it goes through the rest of it. I didn't want to change too much. I did have, again, you can see the words MAG specification, or if it's a supplement, it would actually have that. So I'm kind of throwing that out as a way to start developing these and making them look different. So I'm looking for some feedback, especially on that. I don't think we received any detailed feedback other than the discussion we had last time, which Eric is still incorporating. But we need to come up with format as much as anything else. So looking for feedback on it.
Peter, the one thing that pops out to me is when we start putting supplemental in there, some of the other cities have their supplements. Could there be a chance we could start confusing the city of Avondale supplements with the supplements for MAG?
So part of the idea was always keep the word MAG in front of it, MAG supplemental specification, as opposed to City of Tempe or City of Mesa and so on. And that was the hope, that we'd always keep the acronym MAG in front of the supplemental word.
Okay, which identifies where it's actually coming from.
Yes.
I think that's a great question and comment. And I think I had sent an email with a whole slew of thoughts on wording.
Did that go to Eric and Basher?
I don't remember who I sent it
Okay,
to.
I'll have to look.
It
on my
was a
emails.
month ago, but I do like that. I kind of reiterating, I think I made these comments in the last meeting as well, but I personally think we want to avoid using the word standard for these documents. And so I think that's a move in the right direction. Meaning standard details and standard specifications have always referenced the right-of-way document.
Correct.
And so I want to avoid using the word standard details or standard specifications for these. And also part of that stems from the idea that perhaps some of these details that are being generated are more of a example detail as opposed to a standard detail or a typical detail, or there's some, there's some variability to them that exist inherently as opposed to the standard details, which are pretty well standardized for that particular item. Like the bioswale, the depth may vary, the width may vary, the rock material may vary, everything about it may vary. So it's not a standard detail as much as it is a common detail or typical or sample
Kind of
detail.
a guideline.
A guideline, right.
And we'll
So-
get those comments incorporated for the next one. Eric had asked me, and I really couldn't get around to it until literally this morning.
Yeah.
I'm trying to deal with that. So I'll get him red lines. I'll incorporate the City Mesa comments within that also.
And those were just on form. I think you're going, I don't have an answer for you. I had a lot of thoughts, some
You know, and they were
suggestions,
also-
but I think this moves in the direction that I was thinking myself.
Yeah, and during the working group meeting, I also emailed, you'll have a second email from me, Gordon, that has the some revisions to the draft forward that talks about similar language like that and some of the intents we talked about. We can talk about that more. So I wanted to get this out right now, and then again, Eric will be able to, the city deputy will be able to make some of the more detailed changes for the next meeting as we're going through. But we got to start figuring out the format.
Okay, let's have some feedback from the committee.
Peter, I don't want to throw a complete wrench into this, but here's a thought. Instead of supplement, I mean, these have been for as long as I've been coming here outside of right of way the thought has been coming, you've been working on this for many years.
Mhm.
Could we look at possibly instead of a standard detail, call it an outside of right of way detail? And maybe put that in the definitions at the beginning of the document as an OROW?
And that, and again, I think we need to talk about how we want to do the acronym in front. I think Warren last time was using the term on-site as potential language for it also, as opposed to outside right away or that. Yes, I think that's, again, I threw MS out there, just as mag supplement. We could use another acronym very easily on.
Yeah, and we've talked actually about this a lot in Buckeye, because with on-site, there's two different meanings sometimes. So if you're working on a subdivision, if you're working inside the subdivision, we consider that as on-site. You're still working on the public roads though. But if you're working on an improvement plan for a commercial development, your on-site is outside of the rights. It's completely separate. So the on-site, I see it kind of being an animal that could bite you.
And I'm
So-
very open on this.
Yeah. I don't know. I'm kind of leaning towards, you've been running this for a long time, that we've been talking outside of right of way for 7 or 8 years.
Yep. I have no problem with
Yeah.
whatever acronym or how we want to do it. We just need to come up with some uniform. But that's why I wanted to start throwing it out, because it's easier to throw darts at something that you actually got something written out there. So I'm very open to that.
What about instead of outside of right away, just calling it, say, non-right of way detail?
Kind of an NROW.
I don't know. If it's not, I'm just trying to think what else, if it's not in the right of way, it's non-right of way. That could mean private, on-site.
Yeah, the on-site, like I said, that in our world could get a little confusing because on-site.
It could, I agree, yeah, on-site.
Why don't you think about it? We'll discuss in a few minutes when we get to the
absolutely.
discussion for the working group, because it's going to come up again. But again, I wanted this out there as we get these ideas. This is great. We're going to have some more cases coming up, and so we got to get on top of this fairly quick. Thank you.
I think we're already talking about this now. If there's other feedback or comments, we might as well hear them now.
Yeah, I mean, if we want to just jump into that, there's the first email I sent you earlier that's got the revision to the draft forward on there, and that's got similar types of, it's a bit more concise in terms of the wording. There it is. Yeah, open that one up. So based on the conversations last time, there were certain items. I kept the top one, says public works construction outside the right of way. And then I added the other line we had, which we talked about also, which I don't know if we need both of them, but it was supplement specifications for details and details for on-site development. Maybe there's a blend of these two to come up with the actual final title. Language changed in there, as we said, was get rid of the word standard. We'll call these, call them specification details within supplement are intended to apply to all agency work. I added the low impact development infrastructure to this because it seems like there's a lot of these that are going to come out that are directly related to that, and avoided the word buildings and sites, or building sites to just buildings and facilities, trying to make it more uniform. Warren had asked last time to make sure there's an emphasis in terms of the purpose of this, or the intent being for uniformity. I highlighted that because we did have that in there. I'm not sure if maybe we want to have something more strongly worded or bring it farther up. And then that term of standards versus, and I put you can see the words guidelines, requirements, a selection of language in there with that same intent of not trying to establish these as a standard. One of those two words, maybe requirements is too strong, maybe guidelines is too soft, but at least there's some language we can look at there. So the intent is to try to get it toward those things. This is going to lead into all of the standards no matter what, either specification or detail. It's going to be our preface to the whole thing. So again, Gordon, you'll be able to get that out now that I was very, very tardy on getting it to everybody. And
Yeah, after the meeting, I'll post these documents to the meeting webpage.
yeah,
Also, one of the things you were talking earlier about potential abbreviations or naming conventions, and the last page of the agenda packet listed all of the supplements that are currently used by agencies and what kind of prefixes they use. So we'll want to avoid those.
yeah, and I've gone through that. Thank you very much, Gordon, for putting that together. I noticed we try to go to four-digit number systems. There's already agencies doing that. There could be some confusion there. So I think that was one we probably don't want to go that direction. There are a series of prefix letters. If we go to something like outside right away or, you know, OROW or NROW, I think we're fairly safe at that point. At the time, I just wanted to have something out there, so I put MS for being Meg supplement, but I think the letters in front are going to be the better way to go. That would be what I would recommend after doing the review of what's there. Numbering system, we start interfering with everybody else's numbers. I even noticed that there are some agency supplements for landscaping. There's two different ones that you had highlighted on there. So it's two agencies using two different number series, and we grabbed 600 for MAG, and so now we have three different landscape ones among the different agents, you know, between MAG and then the two cities that do have the landscape one. So grabbing numbers, I think, would be a difficult direction to go. I think putting an acronym in front is really going to be the way to try to do this. Now, what that acronym is, we'll need to discuss that.
Okay, any other initial feedback? Okay, so Gordon indicated he'll get this information posted for everyone to review in more detail, and we'll have an opportunity to come back in the next meetings or working group meetings and provide some good feedback and hopefully start moving this into a direction where we can implement it.
Yeah, because we're going to probably have at the next, the main meeting, we're going to be introducing another case. So as these start moving forward, we're getting on the front end of it this way. Thank you.
Okay, any final questions or comments specifically on case 2306, the vegetated or rock bioswales? Okay, we'll move to agenda item 12, potential new cases for 2023. And there was in the agenda, I believe, one, did I see that somewhere? Yes, there was a one in the agenda packet on section 610. Is there someone that wants to speak to that one?
This is one that Warren White sent me earlier this month as a possible change. I don't know, Rachel, if he clued you in on it at all. The only thing I know is what he sent me and what you see here.
I've received that same email. He said if there's any questions about it, feel free to email him, or I can pass on my meeting notes to him.
Okay, so, and that's fine. It's not a case for this particular month. So it's listed under our potential future cases. So we'll look forward to having Warren potentially introduce this as a case. It looks like it has to do with gaskets on water lines. So we'll go ahead and look forward to that in the future. Are there any other potential new cases that committee members would like to discuss at this time? Okay, not hearing any, we'll move on to the next portion of our agenda, which is items proposed to be heard, other items. And agenda item 13 is the working group reports. So we'll go ahead and start with our water and sewer working group. Jim?
Yeah, thanks, Mr. Chairman. So we met virtually on March 21st of last month. We had a normal turnout. we did discuss case 2205, Arvid's detail revisions to detail 212. So we pretty much, I think we've pretty much talked it through, and everybody seems to be in agreement with very little pushback or opposition to the changes. So we'll see. Like I said, we can keep it open for another month. If we don't get any more comments, I'd probably be ready for a vote. And we talked about Warren's case with locator wire, the ID detail. So we discussed that, trying to get that narrowed down. Then we had a little discussion, further discussion on this PEX-A pipe materials as alternative to copper for water services in the public right of way. Didn't really have any other comments on it. The industry does say that we can attach tracer wire to it if that's a concern. Just like with other borings that happen that they currently do. Then we had more further discussion on the sewer video testing and guidelines with emphasis on the mandrels. So we're getting some pretty good interest into this. We actually might present a case of coming up with some standards for mandrel as far as minimum size, minimum fins, making sure they're equal number instead of the odd number. So it's what's the eye-opening thing about this whole thing, just in a nutshell, is that the current mandrels that are used in the industry aren't really catching the 5% deflection. So I think that should be of interest to agencies, is that you might have deflections in excess of 5% that you're not picking up with a mandrel test. And then I discussed the C909 material option. I got other agencies, attention here, if they're still online. Is there anybody using this C909 pipe for water line?
Maybe for water can adjustments, water valve adjustments, but we're all ductile iron and not Glendale.
Okay.
Unless it's sewer where we stick with the SDR line of pipe.
Yeah. Yeah, the C909 is interesting because it's more denser, but it's apparently it's a little lighter, so you can get away with thinner walls. It's supposed to be just as strong. And again, it's used, I guess, a lot in California because it's good for seismic loading and shear. So I'm just curious, and the reason Avondale was looking at it is because of the shortages with the supplies on the regular C900. Apparently this is more readily available. So
one point on that, we do a lot of reviews for utilities, the power utilities, and this is on the private side. We're seeing where they're crossing through power easements that that material is being used now. We're seeing more of those for reviews in terms of their capacity to be underneath the heavy SRP equipment, for example. So we have been seeing those come through on the private side.
Oh, okay.
That 909 is for pressurized water or gravity feed?
It's for pressure water.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's what I assumed.
That's where we've seen it as the water side.
All right, thanks for the feedback. And then we had industry person there from Armor Rock and does the precast polymer concrete manhole bases, suggesting that we may want to look at our details as far as allowing them to be, I guess they can be done in 2 parts now, 2 pours, or again, to make them more constructible in the field. They come out with a base, and then you pour in a separate pour where the actual inverts are set. it's like an insert pour, if you want to call it. And there could be some problems with honeycomb or just gaps or spaces that may be a concern. So we just had an initial discussion on that to see if we need to strengthen that spec or that detail, I should say, for the precast bases. I don't know if anybody else has had problems with that in the field.
I just had a project, Loop Lift Station. We did Armor Rock for the wet well. And let me tell you, it was pretty deep, but when we did our hydrostatic testing on it, we did have leaking because of honeycomb out of the base, and they had to inject it and stop the leaks. We probably had 6 or 7 different areas that were leaking. Now this is a wet well. This is, a very large structure compared to a manhole, but all in all, we were happy with the product, but it did take some microscope observation to see where the leaks were at and to mitigate them. And basically what they did is they just drilled a hole, put in a fitting, and pumped in an epoxy in there, which felt similar to what SRP does on their structures when their irrigation structures are leaking, very similar to that.
Oh, interesting. What kind of test was this? The hydrostatic test?
Yeah, we just filled it up to a certain level, all the way to the top, and tried to, we let it set for, I think it was 72 hours is what the set time was, and tried to calculate out for evaporation or figure in evaporation in the equation of how much water we're going to lose. But all in all, we got it sealed up and didn't leak. It took a little while, but Felix was on that project. They're the ones, their subcontractor came out and fixed it up. Actually, Armor Rock sent somebody out too. The biggest challenge we had with that project is finding somebody to be able to lift it because it's so heavy. They're huge. It's a very nice product though. You don't have to worry about getting in there epoxy coating and everything else and just stack it with ram neck. It went in pretty quick.
Yeah, I guess they're getting more and more popular. So it's just something to, maybe we'll look into that. Again, the reason they do 2 pours is just that way the tub, they call it, the exterior, you can use, you don't have to have separate, customized pours for each one of these because they're obviously they're all different with the inverts because you're not doing cast in place. So, they basically set them up with the connections to the pipe, and then they just pour that in. That's the problem is if it's not monitored closely, you could get some gaps in there. So just something to think about, but that's a good feedback to know.
Yeah, it's the same thing with concrete, right? You can get that honeycomb in there, same idea. But yeah, all of ours were precast, and they had basically designed them with the boots built into them. So once we put our pipe penetration in, they were, the boots clamped down. There was redundancy in there, so we didn't get exfiltration or exfiltration, more than infiltration. But all in all, we really liked it. We preferred it because the anti-corrosion, with the sulfuric gas, man, these manholes just get chewed up.
Yeah. All right. Well, thanks for the feedback. But again, this is like, any new material that we have, a new product, new concepts, that they always sometimes need tweaking because this has been in the mag specs now for a few years now, and so this is what happens. You get real life situations, and you got to come back and do it. So that's why specs are always changing. So. Anyways, our next meeting will be next month, April 18th at 1:30, and it'll be a hybrid type meeting. So, all right. Thanks, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Jim. Let's go on to our asphalt materials concrete working groups.
So you can see by what was included in the notes from the last meeting on March 16th in the packet. One of the things that I didn't mention as we talked about the 3 cases was John Shee with Maricopa County was in the working group, and I think this was his first exposure to these things. So he had a number of questions, and he had not seen the presentation that we had made to either the working group or to the subcommittee or to the committee. So I provided that information to him subsequent. I provided him some more of the printed information that we provided. He and I emailed back and forth a little bit, and I think he is understanding of the process now. So that is just something I didn't mention when we talked about it before. He had some conversation about it. Other than that, our next meeting will be April 20th. Obviously, we'll be talking about this some more. That meeting's now going to move to hybrid like we're doing with the standards committee. We'll be available to meet in person at the ARPA offices again, but we'll also have the availability of being online too at the same time.
Thank you, Jeff. And let's see, outside right-of-way working group, or maybe some other new name for this working group at some point.
Just remember to call us, that's all. No, appreciate that, Mr. Chairman. We talked a little bit about what we've already gone through. We had really good attendance on the last meeting, so we had quite a bit of discussion going on. We talked about the first part of the format of the document already, so I'm not going to go through that again. I think it was kind of parallel to the discussion we had today. In terms of the cases, again, we already talked about the bioswale detail. The intent is that we're going to incorporate some changes. We'll get those over to Eric so he can do that. So we should have those changes for the May meeting and present that. Again, I really wanted to get out the nomenclature, the organization, how we start making it look. Other details or other work we're working on is a spillway detail. I should have some red lines to Eric. Get some red lines put together on what that's going to look like. I don't think we're going to have it ready for May, but I think June likely we'll go ahead and have that spillway. That's that tie-in between the sedimentation basin and the street component. Get that in. We don't perceive that as going to be a challenging one. Just been needing to get drafting support. So I think we're getting some looking toward that. So we'll get a red line put together quickly. Detention tanks, Keith Kesty with the City of Phoenix has been working on that. Again, drafting has been some of it of a challenge, but we did have a couple of folks step up. Advanced Drainage Systems is going to help with some of the both comments on it and some of the drafting. And then Greg Creaser with Speedy Associates is now a member of the working group, and he's done quite a bit in that area. So he's going to be providing his review comments and some notes. So I think that's going to move forward. I don't think we're going to be ready for May, but I'm hoping we'll be ready for June to have that case ready to be presented. I have not made much progress on the standard dry well systems. Again, that's sort of a drafting need. I'm hoping to have something to the group in April, but I think it's going to slip to May because I think we want to work on the others. The case we're probably going to have ready sooner rather than later is going to be the thermoplastic body PVC catch basins. That one is effectively, we're at the point of getting final comments in to Advanced Drainage Systems, who's doing the drafting and preparing it. They're in need of a sponsor. They're out doing that actively now to look at which agency they've worked with the most and would be willing to sponsor that. So I think in our meeting that's coming up in a few weeks, we should be seeing the final version. I'm hoping that will be ready for the May meeting to be bringing it to the group in Hull. It's probably the most developed one. Some others that we have kind of in the offing going forward, the stormwater harvesting basins, I think we need some more discussions on that. It's going to be very similar to what you're looking at, some of the items of discussion with the bioswales. We want to make sure we get the bioswales right, then we can go to the stormwater harvesting ones. Infiltration trenches, I think that's probably not going to get out this year, but hopefully we'll have a case this year. I just don't think it's going to be ready for any kind of voting on this year. And we've already talked about the supplements. Our next meeting will be on April 20th, and we're moving to a hybrid format on that. We'll have the in-person here at the MAG offices and the hybrid version online. And so open to any questions anybody would have. Thank you.
I wanted to mention that the hybrid meeting is planned for the Cottonwood room, which is just straight on the other side of this room. But depending on some renovations, it may get moved to the chaparral room, which is on the other side of this floor. But in either case, we can have it here.
Thank you. Appreciate that. I'll be here early because I've got to run another meeting that's going to be occurring back in the Midwest. So I have to be on one computer and then immediately get off and I'll get on this.
Okay, our next agenda item is for any general discussion items. If there's items for the committee, if there's any other general items that you'd like to discuss that weren't items on the agenda already, we can do so at this time. Okay, and item 15, requests for future agenda items. I think some of those were covered in the working group reports. But if there's other items that someone would like to bring up, future agenda items that you'd like to discuss at this time or mention at this time, we can do that. Okay, and any final comments on any of the other activities or current events that you're aware of that you'd like to discuss at this time? Okay, great. Thank you everyone for attending our meeting today. We'll look forward to seeing you in the working groups and at our next May meeting. Thank you.